a three-part session followed by a discussion here at SLSA this year. We're exploring both animals, plants, and microbes. And I'm just going to read a little bit. We're going to be doing a little bit of dual banjos. My name's Evan. I'm not going to do like long-winded introductions for anybody, but just give a little bit of sort of theoretical background for what we're going to be doing in these sessions. Experimenting with different modes of storytelling, anthropologists are revisiting the etymology of the Greek root word ethnos, which is classically defined as a multitude, whether men or beasts, associated living together, a company, a troop, or a swarm of individuals. That's like if you crack open a Greek dictionary and go back to that root word definition. Ethnos is not people, as we were taught as undergrads. Multispecies ethnographers have been playing with the root word of ethnos to collaborate with artists to explore how the human has been formed and transformed amidst encounters with multiple species of plants, animals, fungi, and microbes. Beyond anthropology, conventionally anthropocentric disciplines are actively retrofitting ethnographic methods to render up other forms of life visible. Sociologists have rediscovered the socius of companionship that involves human association with animals. So Jeff here, who's going to be talking to us about his feline laboratory in Manhattan, points out that the very first sociology dissertation in France at the Sorbonne was on animal societies. Geographers have begun to explore more than human and multinatural worlds, describing microbial and biochemical ontologies of interdependence, as well as the corporeal generosity of organic bodies living in the midst of things. Tim Engel suggests that making art can create knowledge, build environments, and transform lives. Collaborations with artists and other makers, according to Engel, might help anthropology develop its unique speculative ambition. The task for the anthropologist, according to Engel, is to open up a space for generous, open-ended, comparative yet critical inquiry into the conditions and potentials of human life. It is to join with people in their speculations about what life might or could be, in ways nevertheless grounded in a profound understanding of what life is like at particular times and places. Building on Engel's insights as well as ongoing interdisciplinary methodological experiments, this series of panels will ask what sort of tactics and techniques must be added to the ethnographic toolkit so that we might realize our speculative ambitions. Rather than pretend to stand aloof from our subject of study, how might we more fully embrace the work of participant observation as part of ongoing performance in the world? How might performative experiments enhance ethnographic practice? So that word performative experiments comes from the philosopher Dehlia Hannah, who's co-coordinating this panel with me. So she coined this phrase to characterize artworks that take the form of scientific experiments and thereby exhibit standard scientific protocol and modes of knowledge production for critical inspection. So she's going to give us a little more on this idea, and then we're going to open it up to our presentations.
So performative experiments are taking place throughout the contemporary art world, with projects involving biological materials and scientific instruments. Material practices of scientific experimentation become aesthetic forms when historical experiments are reenacted and conventional techniques are deployed as new artistic media. I've used the term performative in a double sense to talk about these kinds of practices. First, to what has been referred to as the performative turn in science and technology studies, urged by scholars such as Pickering, Hacking, and Haraway, which recognizes that science does not merely represent an enduring reality, but also performatively enacts particular configurations of matter by means of iteration and repetition over time. In this sense, scientific experimentation may be understood through an analogy with theatrical performance, in which various forms of matter, instruments, artifacts, and organisms play their roles under the direction of the experimentalist orchestra. The notion of a performative experiment also brought up queer theory, particularly Judith Butler's work. Queer theories of gender performance have emphasized, of course, that practices of imitation and parody call attention to features of the original object, real men or women, that otherwise tend to escape notice by appearing natural or familiar. The parodic performance of gender in forms of drag, camp, and queer identities feels all gender as an effect produced in performance. Strict social norms of intelligibility govern these performances, simply exaggerate, parody, critique the practices and assumptions of conventional science. In other cases, performative experiments offer faithful performances in unusual contexts, and thereby expose scientific practices to atypical conventions of interpretation. Like queer enactments of gender, performative experiments exhibit the performativity of conventional science, and thereby make scientific results of knowledge production and their claims available for new forms of inspection.
So without further ado, I'll introduce Karen Bohlander, who's going to talk to us about the Rodeo Lab.
Hello. In Coming Home to the Pleistocene, Paul Shepard gives us this dark image. The long shadow thrown over the Earth's ecology is that of a man on a horse, a domestic animal which, more than any other consolidated central power, energized the worldwide debacle of the skinning of the Earth, the creation of modern war, and the ideological dissociation from the earthbound realm. That is a tall order for a single companion species to do it, however dynamic it might be. But we need only go to the rodeo to find contemporary dramatic stagings of this conquering force and its roughshod ideologies. Rodeo today is both a rural tradition and a thriving industry that varies in cultural, political, and aesthetic practices across geographies where cattle, horses, and humans historically mix. In all its diversity, though, from rural hometown rodeos to monster Las Vegas bull riding spectacles to the International Gay Rodeo Association finals, one dynamic holds steady, and that is the traditional series of staged events in which humans, bulls, steers, and horses, and other species compete in timed events that pit the performance of beastly wildness and the compromised freedoms against human dexterity and dominion. Meanwhile, Shepard and others speculate that the record of such wranglings may go all the way back to Paleolithic Lascaux, where the oldest bits of woven rope were found amidst some of the earliest known representations of bovines and equines. Seems early humans were calf roping and bronc busting over 32,000 years ago, if only in our dim imaginations. Luckily, rodeo is not the only kind of interaction among humans and domestic ungulates. I was lucky enough to grow up in a flow of multispecies action that brimmed with charged wonders and richly collaborative worldviews. The kaleidoscopic richness of our embodied stories reminds us that the shadows and outlines are not very good figures to think of. Faceless and flat, they are severed from their specific embodied histories. Silhouettes, like the classic bucking bronco icon, assert thin myths of conquered wildness, while hiding complex material semiotic knots of domestic mammal humans. One aim of Rodeo Lab is to turn these flat old emblems inside out, to open and spotlight knotty tangles of specific bodies becoming the same places. In rodeo or any mixed species endeavor, violent asymmetries are often inextricably tangled with kinships, respect, cares, and love. In my case, these tensions work their way into a durational performance art practice, which inherits creative indeterminacy from John Cage and practices of playful but serious political resistance from socially engaged performance pioneers like Royu Kelly's Carolee Schneeman, Mary Kelly, Joseph Boyd, and many others. Bucking myths of disembodied logos, early performance artists absorbed the feminist sense of personal and political and posed their own bodies and lived times as creative materials. As Ron Rolio observed in Circus Encounters, feminist performance and its heirs and ecological art assert that to thought move, bodies have to move too. To make a long-ass story short, I've spent years, a decade actually or more, in a performance practice of rural roadside journeys and homestead husbandry with a family herd of asses. It began in 2002 with a 7-week trek across the U.S. South with an extraordinary American spotted ass I call Alias. And I've been wrangling with spotted asses as figures bearing various material, cultural, and political burdens ever since. At the same time, the asses are also beloved companions whose complex lives elude representation and and undermine the dominion of logos in our muddy, vibrant, ever-evolving argument. Back in 2007, I began a series of performances called the Dive Rodeo. As a time-based, site-specific performance series, the Dive Rodeo reimagines traditional rodeo events like team roping, rock riding, and steer wrestling. In the spirit of Dehlia Hannah's performative experiments, as creative critical interventions in dominant paradigms of scientific practices, Dive Rodeo parodies and interrogates prevailing assumptions and modes of interspecies relations, as performed in rodeos. The extent to which rodeo is a collaborative cow-human-horse performance is beyond the scope of this talk, but suffice to say that all participants make a good show of it, especially those so-called bucking stock, foals and broncs who are bred and born for the job. The dominant theme of man overpowering beast was the main rodeo premise I sought to reimagine. Playing with typical rodeo rules and materials brought me straight away to the rope, or rather the lasso. The lasso is the foremost technology by which cowpokes assert power over fleeing beasts. Turns out the spinning rope is also a pretty handy scholarly trope, as metaphors of knots and entanglements work to illustrate complex forms of material semiotic interconnection. From Donna Haraway's companion species knots to Evan Kirksey's freedom in entangled worlds, ropey tangles are good figures for thinking within thick and intricate multi-species worlds. The first dive rodeo performances inverted the loop of the lasso. Rather than seeking to grasp and subdue wild others, it framed encounters with free-flowing mystery rooted in specific places. As a playful inversion of rodeo's dramatized wildness and speed, Creek Ropin placed the lasso in different sites around the local watershed and attended to whatever flowed through, visible or nameless. Time-based and site-specific practices like this perform what Tsing calls passionate immersion, through indeterminate encounters within environments whose histories and present assemblages are always more elusive than what we can grasp or lasso or even name. Next came turtle roping, where I set the lasso on a likely log and waited for a river turtle to possibly happen into it. A later public installation challenged passersby on a local greenway in Athens, Georgia, to sit by the tangled bank and watch the lasso in the middle of the river. How slow can you go? How long can you ride wild time? Chances of anybody getting roped were slim to none, but logbooks offered contestants a place to record their slowest times and surprise encounters, which ranged from kids' drawings of newly hatched turtles to a red fox seen crossing the river on a fallen log at dawn. In 2008, I switched from the fixed lasso loop to the finicky trick rope, inspired by Linda Montano and Tsing Saya's Year of the Rope, a durational performance where the two artists lived tied together by an 8-foot rope for an entire year. I immersed in the much less demanding practice of learning a few simple rope tricks. Site-specific trick roping practice became a way of thinking in the wild thick of places, spinning in a wholeness too big to be captured. The unique physics of rope spinning. The unique physics of rope spinning grapple with tricky tangles and knots while failing to fix anybody or thing in place. Karen Barad illuminates the value in this kind of ontological fumbling when she writes, "Thought experiments are material matters. Thinking has never been a disembodied or uniquely human activity. The idea is to do collaborative research, to be in touch in ways that enable responsibility." While trick roping subverts modes of spectacular representation that flatten fleshly knots, the time came for the dive rodeo to face up to a heftier responsibility and wrestle with the singular beasts with whom human histories, myths, global industries, and art are most inextricably tangled: Taurus. Bovines have been tapped as a resource for human cultures in every conceivable way since their domestication roughly 10,000 years ago. Cattle are a force in colonial landscapes and changing climates that barbed and twisted poker streets continue to shape. And of course, you can't have any kind of rodeo without steer wrestling, calf roping, and the bullfight. If I aim to pitch rodeo to honor mysteries hidden in dismissed and degraded domestic lives, I would have to grab the bull by the horns, or at least the steer, the hornless steer. So when I met Norman, an engaging Jersey who was an experimental resource animal for a major university vet school, I recognized a steer I needed to wrestle with in more ways than one. Norman was already an experimental animal. Having come to live at the vet school's resource animal farm, his body was a complex biological commodity in different ways than the average dairy cow or meat on the hook. Norman was tangled up in invisible skeins of scientific knowledge production, mostly meant to benefit agribusiness industries. As far as I know, Norman was never involved in any formal ecological experiments, but what I wanted to investigate with him was beyond the bounds of formal ethology anyway. Drawing on Bertrand Desprez's work on interspecies becoming, Dominique Lestel writes that traditional ethology offers an inadequate set of methods if we aim to delve into rich cultural co-becoming among species. Lestel describes, quote, a growing understanding that we would do well to develop a concept of human-animal relations based a priori not on the paradigm of the separation of human and animal natures, but on that of their complementarity, on the paradigm of convergence between the two, of life shared by intentional agents belonging to different species. Norman himself more or less proposed our steer wrestling performance, raised by human caretakers and secure in the constant company of a nanny goat named Beer. Norman liked everybody and would thunder up to the gate whenever someone came near, eager for content. So it was steer wrestling, also known as bulldogging, offered a conceptual frame for a performative experiment that would bring the dive rodeo face to face with the ancient twists and barbs of human-bovine entanglements. Bulldogging, briefly, is a contest where a horseback cowboy chases down a galloping steer and leaps from the saddle towards the steer's head, hoping to grab his horns, bend back his neck, and slam him to the ground in the fastest time, of course. I took a little liberty with typical rodeo and mixed up the rules of bulldogging with the time requirement of the bull run, which is, of course, 8 seconds. I decided to slow down those infamous 8 seconds and spend an entire 8-hour night wrestling with Norman. Less of a spectacle than a secret, vulnerable encounter aimed to resist the worn-out man versus beast dualism. Though I initially imagined I might try to ride Norman, the goal was not to break him, but to try to know him a little bit better in an embodied way. At least I hope to fully and attentively inhabit a shared space where we can come together and find out what happens. The night with Norman trespassed on vet school property in more ways than one. We snuck onto the locked and gated farm and made a secret camp, but the project also trespassed on assumed knowledge-making methods and ethics of animal resource management. As Donna Haraway writes of difficult responsibilities we must face when we claim the lives for scientific knowledge production. Artists Kathy High and Beatrice DaCosta each have reckoned with troubles that arise when we consider granting bios to lab animals. These works challenge us to meet the conflicts encountered when we try to live ethically in places where violent hierarchies reign. Wrestling with Norman's role as an experimental resource, I also wanted to extend what Grant Kester calls a dialogical aesthetic in multispecies directions. Following Habermas, Kester describes dialogical aesthetics in contemporary art that resist hegemonic modes of representation and create spaces to explore co-subjectivities, marginalized or erased ways of knowing and communicating. I never studied formal ethology. All I know of animal behavior is born in my body, shaped by experiences with others in the world in diverse ways. I did not want data. Steer wrestling with Norman sought to open collaborative possibilities for coming to know our different but overlapping worlds a little better. and I better hurry. I'm going to get to the last part. 1 minute. Oh no. Okay. How fast can I read? And you can understand me? Okay. As a performative experiment posed through the deliberate indeterminacy of performance art, the Night with Norman asked this: what happens if we wrangle, as subjects, two newly acquainted domestic mammals bound together by material ties and invisible histories, meeting in a specific time and place? How will we behave together this starry pasture night? How will we be changed come morning? I grasped right away that ways learned with other big-bodied beasts, certain flicks of limbs or clicking noises that communicate desire for personal space, meant nothing to Norman. His body's heavy capers were strange and unpredictable, and instead of familiarity, I met unexpected fear. For hours, I perched on the pasture gate while Norman stood just on the other side, with his big-boned, pale bulk and orange-tufted head pressed against my knee, or any other body part I would extend. He stomped impatiently and flung his drooling muzzle around with a cloud of fighting flies on his back. Late afternoon faded into dusk and dark. He could not get up the guts to climb down, despite awareness, as Haraway has it, that the open is not comfortable. After dark, a chill came. Shivering and miserable, I finally worked up the courage to climb down and sidle along the barbed wire edge of the pasture. Norman thudded at my heels, his ruminant breath raising the hairs on the back of my neck. I didn't think he would trample me on purpose, but did he know how not to? Finally, in a desperate moment, as Norman bore down and I backed against the barbed wire, I took off the flowery rodeo shirt, saved the day, I wore for the occasion and flicked it. I cracked it like a whip, and this he understood. Norman knew of bovine human body language I did not, but I found a gesture he recognized. He backed off and followed a ways behind me to the gate. Exhausted, I headed to the tent in the woods for some rest. Feeling like I missed something, I got up before dawn and went back to the pasture. I found Norman and Deer lying down, two dark mounds ruminating under an oak in the silvery moonlight. Norman got up when he saw me. Here we go again. Then he changed his mind and lay back down with a thump in the wet grass. And in a flash, I saw an opening to what I had vainly hoped to grasp that night. As I climbed into the pasture and curled into the warm curve of Norman's neck in the wet grass, he lay calmly blinking and chewing the sky. Here was the impossible dream I was chasing. No more or less authentic or archaic than the drive to overpower him. If only for a fleeting moment in the dewy silver dawn, I met another beast inside a fleeting bubble of peace. But the dangers of wrestling with Norman this way were more than hopeful. Trouble comes when we get roped into caring for others who are killable, expendable, rendered faceless to suffer for our purposes. Norman was far from faceless, but he was vengeful property. I could not respect his fate beyond that secret encounter. I won't let go of the experience. Instead, let me tease a thread from the snarled myths of rodeo in the old Wild West. In a scene from the classic Clint Eastwood western, The Outlaw Josie Wales, native chief Watani faces off on horseback with Josie Wales, then offers to let him pass with the words, "Go in peace." Unsatisfied with the terms, our hero replied, "I reckon not." Given the rich multi-species stories overshadowed by flat myths of man versus beast, let's revisit this exchange for the mind of Haraway's call to nurture attachment sites and sticky knots, where we respond to seriously different, felt and known, finite truths that must inhabit well without a lack of peace, where ultimate control and peace are both fleeting dreams in the arenas of rodeos or laboratories. Let us reckon not instead, and respond best as we can to all the ways we are bound together in rowdy times.
It's really delightful to be here today. Like looking out amongst, I see so many friendly faces and people who are in this dialogue, even audience and presenters. I'd like to next welcome Lee from the front. Oh, you're for it? Let's see. I'm going by this one. Wait, let's see. Oh, nope, good call. Let's see. Aaron, Tom. Thank you for letting me know. So I'm very pleased to welcome Tom Van Doren, one of my colleagues at UNSW Australia.
All right, so I've taken the purpose of this panel to be to think about how we're all thinking about methods, how we're all doing multi-species studies. It's very hard to follow currently. She's doing fascinating things. And so I'm going to talk to you as a philosopher of what I'm trying to do in the space of multi-species studies and how I think why it makes sense to do that as a philosopher. But it is not anywhere near as creative or perhaps even interesting as what Aaron did. Okay. So ubiquitous in their global presence, crows can be found almost everywhere that people are. From abundant urban species finding new ways to exploit changing cities like Tokyo, to critically endangered island crows just hanging on in the forests of Guam. Some of these crows are cared for and conserved by dedicated people. Others are the targets of eradication programs. Across the globe, crows offer a diverse range of instructive sites for exploring the challenges and possibilities of living well with non-human partners. So my current research project takes these charismatic birds as guides into the complexity of our current period, exploring shifting human-crow relations in 6 case study sites in the context of this related process: globalization, urbanization, extinction, and climate change. In each site, I'm thinking human-crow relations through the lens of a single keyword. Most of these keywords are ones with long histories in both Western philosophical and scientific thought. From hospitality to community, from inheritance to witness. Rather than going into depth about any of these crows or these key terms, though, what I want to do in this short paper is to flesh out the general approach that I'm working with here. Specifically, I'd like to outline what I take to be the core of the kind of field philosophy situated within the larger space of multi-species studies. So as I understand, multi-species studies is a broad, emergent field of scholarship, a field that all of the members of this panel and the companion panels contribute to in their own ways. Under this general umbrella, we can find approaches like multi-species ethnography, ethno-ethology, anthropological life, anthropology beyond humanity, more human geographies, as well as work in extinction studies, more in the panel on Sunday, proliferation of humans. Despite their differences, I think that all of these approaches are united by a common interest in better understanding what is at stake ethically, politically, epistemologically, for different forms of life caught up in diverse relationships of knowing and living together. At their core, each is grounded in what Tsing has referred to as passionate immersion in the lives of non-humans. So drawing often critically on the resources of the natural sciences, but also on a range of other knowledges from artists, hunters, indigenous people, and more, this work aims to pay close attention to the ways of life of non-human others and their consequential entanglements with larger worlds within the forestry, city, and farm, and protected area. Of course, scholars in this area are also developing new approaches to the kind of immersive knowledge beyond engaging with relevant literatures, beyond conventional graphic methods of collaboration with local communities of scientists. Scholars are finding new ways to spend time, practicing techniques to, and ultimately to learn about the other worlds that are not things. So I want to talk about those field philosophy, one of those possible approaches. So my own approach is less experimental, perhaps, less bold than many of these. I'm a philosopher by training, and so in a way that's possible, perhaps only possible for a philosopher, I'm still thoroughly excited by the novelty of getting out into this place we call the field, participating, observing what our less armchair-bound colleagues call the practical research. In conducting this kind of research, I'm particularly interested in what the field does to our fields. I borrowed the term field philosophy from the independent work of both Dominic Lascelles and Robert Cronin, and I'm drawing on their accounts There are a few things that I think are taking at the heart of doing field policy. Somewhat crudely, they might be broken down into questions of how we know what we know and why we know. And I'd like to say more about each of these sets of questions in turn, interspersed with one more sequence of illustrative encounters. So I was drawn to the Hawaiian forests by their disappearing crows. Now extinct in the wild, the Hawaiian crow, Alala, can only be found in two small captive breeding cells. And with over 100 birds, conservationists are now ready to start releasing them back into the wild world. They're facing an uphill battle in the monsoon forests. Restoring habitat to conditions suitable for these birds will require fencing and the eradication of pigs and other ungulates in large areas of land. However, some local people, including some native Hawaiians, want to be able to continue hunting these birds. As a result, this conservation project, like many others in the islands, has become deeply divisive. Some Hawaiians oppose it, others support it and see it as part of maintaining the diversity of living beings that hunt. Big histories of colonisation come to back up here in working out the future of this project, something I'm exploring elsewhere. So rethinking how we know is quite simply about expanding and enhancing our approaches to knowing others and influence. This involves engaging with a wider range of literatures, perhaps especially the natural sciences, but also getting out into the field, observing, spending time in crows and captive facilities, talking to everyone from conservationists, hunters, and artists and activists. In this way, we might come to understand and appreciate this disappearing way of life in new ways, what it means to the forest, to the plants whose seeds these crows once dispersed, what this disappearance means to people now coming to terms with a world in which, as one local put it, we've lost the most charismatic component of forests, but also what the conservation of the species might be, how that might challenge our sensibilities. So through this work, I've discovered that getting out into the field in this way is not just about avoiding empirical resources and data points, but it's also about learning a new kind of humility, about the possibility of an understanding that we're not situated, grounded in specificity of actual place knowledge. This is a good lesson for many philosophers to learn. In places like Hawaii, grappling with the diverse understandings, values, and ways of being and knowing, in short, multiplying perspectives, radically challenges how we philosophize, how we are able to imagine what might be possible. And this is true, I think, to such an extent that I'm no longer able to do philosophy without feeling something I find that scary and exciting. So my work, though, is fundamentally about ethical questions. And doing ethics in the field is not just another version of what has disparagingly been called applied ethics. An ethics that is formalized and repackaged in the armchair for later use. Instead, it's about a genuinely emergent ethics that grapples with the specificity and complexity of the world. This is an ethics that refuses to calculate, refuses to produce a fixed set of rules, but rather aims to hold open the question, to ask again and again how we might respond well. Because there are many existing theoretical resources for that kind of ethical approach from there and down to the parody. So that's how we know what we know. I was drawn to a postal account of Van Holland's by a desire to understand the Dutch government's decision to begin killing a small group of roughly 30 house crows who had been living in the area for about 20 years, since their parents arrived, likely as stowaways of important language. Arriving in the area, my planned research was immediately hijacked by the sun, by its specific content. Right across the water from town, right in my face, was the Port of Rotterdam, Europe's largest port. This place is both the centre of a massive transportation network and also home to a broad range of chemical factories and refineries, taking advantage of easy access to global markets. In short, it's an engine of the Anthropocene, another one. And so I realised that coming to terms with this little group of crows required me to think through this port as the vector of their arrival, but also as a sign of contrast, of the incredible inconsistency with regard to which environmental problems are actively managed and which are instead celebrated as paths to a better, more developed future. So this is for me an example of the way the field might reform what we do. This is about the kinds of questions that we ask about who determines the scope of the environment, who decides what is important. In getting out into the world and thinking with others, not just drawing on their opinions and data, collaboratively engaging, but field-based philosophy also ends up being steered its focus by the people setting the questions of others. What do they struggle with? What matters to them? But of course, the others that are relevant here are not just human others. They might be crows or any number of other species, or as in this case, many facets. So Port of Rotterdam was surprised to intervene, pose new questions, and perhaps even a new research focus. And so, doing field philosophy, doing philosophy from the field requires a kind of responsiveness, reading what we thought we wanted people to know, something that good ethnographers haven't really known, but that was exciting. Okay, so this final question of why. In the city of Brisbane, Australia, the local Parisian crows have taken to living in large numbers than they do anywhere else. One of the results has been complaints from local people about large roosts that are noisy in the morning, but also about the daily messy crows. As part of my effort to understand the situation, I'm collaborating with some biologists who've been studying the crows for many years. We're bringing ethnographic work into dialogue with fundamental biology and field ecology to think about better approaches to urban cohabitation. At the same time, though, we're keen to engage local residents, so we're developing a citizens' humanities project, very like the language of citizen humanities, we're writing in citizen science. This project encourages people to become urban field naturalists, paying attention to crows, learning about why these birds do what they do, and sharing their insights online. We're interested in whether knowing more might, in this case, make cohabitation easier, or at the very least, more interesting for both parties. And this is work that I'm still only in the planning stage, and also unfortunately can't tell you much more about it than that. So this example, though, brings us to the why of knowing. What's the purpose of our research? Do our modes of knowing make a difference? What kind of difference? So my own work, much of it in collaboration with Dehlia Hannah, is thought about this issue through the lens of story. And we understand story here as a verb, a way of doing the work, and are interested in telling stories that call others, including ourselves, into new forms of curiosity and understanding, new relationships, and certainly new capabilities. And so our storytelling is an inherently ethical project, not just because it explores questions of responsibility, but because it takes up the work of telling stories as itself an act of response, an effort to craft better worlds with others. So with this in mind, a philosophical approach grounded in the field seems to also require modes of communication, storytelling, that are at the very least widely accessible, both within and beyond the academy. This is about how we write, who we write for, but also where we publish, from newspapers and blogs to the role of open access publishing. Beyond writing questions of accessibility, this might also be about genuine collaborative storytelling. Storytelling approaches involving something that I'm only beginning to explore in my work and elsewhere. It's something where I think philosophy can learn a lot from artists and others who've been involved in public storytelling for a long time. In this context, too, the field has the potential to question and reshape our philosophical practices. So I don't think that every piece of work that we develop needs to tick all of these boxes or push the envelope into these broad areas that I've sketched as the how, what, why, and knowing. Some of my work is more accessible, some less. Some is being guided by others' questions, and some is much more focused on my own very specific passions. But as a broad space of inquiry, these are some of the questions, perhaps some of the demands, that I think doing philosophy in the field opens up. Each of these core dimensions of field philosophy is, I think, compatible with much of the work going on in species studies, but might also push some of that work in interesting new directions. These are approaches informed by anthropology, the arts, and other disciplines, fields from which philosophy has a great deal to learn. And I look forward to further discussion of these themes at the audience. Thank you.
Next we have Jeff from the Institute of Feline Studies in Manhattan. And I might also say that we're going to have some time for questions, hopefully at the end of the day, but also be gathering up questions for tomorrow. So we've got a long open-ended discussion with all the panelists tomorrow.
thank you very much. Thanks to Evan and Dehlia for putting this together. And it's really wonderful to be here. And because so many people who are either on the panel or the other panels or the audience have been really valuable interactions and inspirations for this work. So it's fantastic. Thank you. And you'll undoubtedly have noticed that also Kirksey's name is listed on the program as my collaborator in this work. And she's been here the last couple of days, but she had to leave this morning to present other work on the ethics of animal calling and public health at the National Women's Studies Association in Milwaukee. So I'll present this, and she's presenting that book there. But a lot of the data and conceptualization behind this is something that she's responsible for as well. I'll just say briefly that we do have the Center for Feline Studies, which practices this kind of ethno-ethology, or as it's also known, ethno-ethnography, that Dominique was telling other people have talked about, to try to draw on the traditions of both ethnography in the social sciences and ethology in the biological sciences, to think about areas where animals, non-human animals and human animals overlap, or in situations where I think we all are nowadays, where the distinction between humans and other animals has been so heavily problematized that it doesn't really stand up or hold water anymore to hold to a hard and fast distinction between ethology and ethnography. So we've been trying to look at feline-feline interactions, feline-human interactions along those lines for a long time. As an outgrowth of that, a few years ago, Vice Media contacted us, and they were working on a project partly about the internet, the disabled internet celebrity cat Lil Bub, in case any of you know Lil Bub, and also about the larger question of why internet cat videos are so popular. And we ended up to make a full-length feature out of that, which was in the Tribeca Film Festival. And we were the research collaborators with them, or the research consultants. And we also appeared in film. This clip that I'm going to show today was, I guess, a trailer, kind of an extract from that film. And it's when they came to the Center for Feline Studies and filmed some of the work at the Center for Feline Studies. So I'll show the clip, which is about 7 minutes long, and then I will just speak a little bit about it afterwards. That's audio too, so I hope it's let's see, we have a small. Perfect, thank you. My name's Jeffrey. So, by training, I'm a sociologist and a philosopher. My main area of interest is to study cats, feline interactions, and feline-human interactions. This is one of my favorite shirts. We thought my single favorite shirt. I and your book was there. So we've done our best at the Center for Feline Studies to make the way that cats interact with one another, the way that people interact with cats. We spend a lot of time meticulously observing and trying to make sense of some of their behaviors. I chose all those videos we did for other things that I study because I grew up in Los Alamos, New Mexico. Is the history of nuclear weapons development. And one of my teachers told me, you can't just be thinking about nuclear war all the time. You've got to have something else to occupy your thoughts that's less bleak, that's funnier and more engaging. Again, stop everything. I need to be it's like a drug. It just makes you feel good. Give me the cuteness, unadulterated. I don't want to hear anything, see anything. I just want the cute, unadulterated. That's my favorite cat. My name is Amy. I'm a photo editor at the New York Times Magazine. Before that, I worked at Vice Magazine, and when I was there, I did the cute shows. I don't even think you should be shooting me for this. You should just hear my voice and just show like a post of a kitten, you know, like that's all you really see. My favorite episodes of the cute show, Catherine was like a back in the days of MySpace. People would use it as their like profile picture on MySpace all the time. The popular ones were like the frog hat or the bunny hat. I would just always see them, and it's always to see a cat. And so I did some internet sleuthing, and I saw that it was, you know, this Japanese woman in Japan who did this cat together. Many animals, especially young
like kind of larger eyes, a particular kind of facial structure, kind of round facial structure, and that humans have an evolutionarily developed capacity to affect young humans. So the theory is that many animals, they trigger the same reaction for us. She said that she started making clothes for cats because God told her to. I want to message God like that. Hello, Juliet. Welcome to the Center for Feline Studies. Please come in. This is where we study interactions between the cats and between cats and humans. We spend a lot of time hanging out here in different areas of the center. We've got our workstations where we can take notes about what they're doing and transfer those notes to the computers. April 11th, 2008. You see 2 cardboard boxes of cats and 4 people standing around. 2 tourists from Denmark are talking to the cats, trying to calm them down, saying that if they weren't so far from home and on vacation, they would take the cats in. We have 2 different sites at the center. There's the main site, and there are 4 cats who are usually here. We have another site, a 2-cat site, where 2 sisters named Esmeralda and Mimi. But we also have a lot of photos, and we have some videos. But it's invaluable to have thousands of millions of different cats going on. A picture of like cute cats. There's this underground notion that the internet is made of cats. Yeah, so that's a fairly persuasive notion. Obviously, doesn't hold any water, technically. Dated, sex toys, you know what? I will say the one downside on the cute cat videos is it's kind of like rude. It's raised the cute bar so high that now when I see a regular cat, I'm like, you're okay. Yes, humans are formed by our interactions with cats, with dogs, with other kind of animals. Everyone actually lives with animals. I think human culture is extensively indebted to animal references and animal interactions. There is no deep thing to it. That's the beauty of it. There is, I don't know. I just like it. I don't have to think too hard about it. One of the things we work on in the Center for Feline Studies is cat yoga. I just systematically look at yoga with cats. So the way in which a lot of their movements are basically a form of yoga because they're very limber. But then beyond that, joining yoga with us is kind of an intersubjective, communicative experience. Seems like a very likely story that yoga and a number of martial arts were developed based on a really careful observation of the way that animals behave, and then trying to imitate that for humans. I'll try another kind of breathing exercise. During this one, if we're lucky, Katrina might hop up here. The thing that got me interested in cat yoga in the first place is that I would just be doing yoga at my house, or we would be doing yoga there, Hodgetts and the Center for Feline Studies, and they started to join in. They started to show an interest in taking part, either by imitating some of the poses or by joining in, like getting on your stomach or getting on your back poses. Right, to a narrow ship, I guess.
All right, so that's the vice clip. that was because at the time, perhaps justifiably, Ananya wasn't sure what Vice's take or treatment of us would be in the video. Eventually, we became convinced that they had a pretty authentic interest in what we were doing, but at first she didn't know if it was going to be just like taking the piss out of what we were doing or making fun and stuff. So anyway, otherwise she more prominently and probably more eloquently describing what we're doing there. A couple things about this I wanted to talk about. I mean, of course, on the one level, it's silly and it's enjoyable, but I do think that the issue about the internet cat videos has a lot of deeper significance to it in terms of what they represent. And one thing that really became obvious to us in terms of working on this project was that it revealed a feline-centered or feline-centric type of sociality, because this whole project really came together around the feline of the bug. So there was whole groups, whole orchestrations of humans and other non-human actors who were coming together kind of around this feline or around feline relations. And as a result of working on this project, we met little bug and then little bug people, and grumpy cat people. But all of that was like a feline-mediated sociality. We humans wouldn't have met one another or would not have been interacting with one another if it had not been for the linchpin or the nodes of the felines. Another add, I should also point out that you probably saw in there too, that at the Center for Feline Studies itself, since there's 4 felines there, or at a certain time there's been 6 felines there, it's usually the case that there's more cats than humans, so it really is a feline dominant social situation. And the humans feel like on the margins, so to speak. And so it's not a human dominated social interaction, it's a feline dominated social interaction. Also, I want to, in thinking about the significance of videos like this and the videos that Vice is drawing on, I want to point towards something that Vincent Dupre has discussed in her book, Hodgetts les animaux si on me pose les bonnes questions. What would animals say if we ask them the right questions? That's the right title in English, isn't it, Fred? Okay. Right, that Fred is translating, it's going to come out soon on Minnesota. It's an apicetary, so the Y chapter is Y is for YouTube. And in the Y is for YouTube chapter, Vincent argues that YouTube videos like this are producing a transformative effect on ethology the same way that nature documentaries had a generation or so before. It's a way that it opens up a window or a view for us onto animal interactions and a different way of figuring animal-human interactions. That's happening through internet videos. So even though many of them silly, there's a lot of them that do open up spaces of interaction and different kind of meditations on the ethnographic dimension. All right, I talked about this a little bit already, but a lot of our research is also organized around the principle that Vincent Dupre calls principle of politeness, and Dominique Lassalle calls principle of courtesy, and that is that in situations like this, you have to leave the maximum of initiative and latitude to the animals rather than the humans to disclose certain research questions or disclose behaviors that you want to look at, and that's how the cat yoga originated, because they started to do yoga with us or take part in yoga with us. And just like you see in this video, they only do it when they want to. You can't really force them to do it. It's something that they have to take the initiative to get going. So it's something that does leave a maximum latitude or initiative to them. Okay, so last couple of considerations about these. As part of the idea, the founding idea of the Center for Feline Studies is that it's based on a phenomenological interaction, based on analysis of phenomenological interaction between humans and animals. So it's based on everydayness, it's based on sharing space, it's based on using that space as the site for observation, as a field site, as Tom would say in terms of field philosophy. And there's certain things that I think you can only find, or that you can only see, or only get a window into by using spaces or field sites like that. And one last kind of consideration is that, as we already see from the widespread nature of these internet cat videos, there's a tremendous permeation of this kind of awareness or the role of different cats, dogs, too, and other animals in popular culture more broadly. And just one small indication of that is you might know the Killer Mike and LP album Run the Jewels, and they just recently released a new version of it called Meow the Jewels, which is entirely put together based on cat samples, so cats purring, cats meowing. So you wouldn't expect ordinarily that a gangster rap album is going to use cat sounds, but it's an indication of how extensive this crossover is. Thank you.
So now we actually do have Lee from the front gallery in New Orleans, and I might say that Lee helped create some kin connections in this room. She's, and part of thanks to Lee that I know one of my very favorite artists in the world, Kathy High. We curated the show 2010. I think we decided that brought Kathy to New Orleans, and that's where we first met.
I love this panel. It's a privilege to be on it. And bovines, orbits. I feel like if having Facebook posts counts as going on the formal record, I've submitted to my orbit. This is about a project that was as an event happened a year ago. As an artist, I worked with a variety of mediums. Horses at the Museum is part of a long-term, ongoing multimedia art project investigating thresholds of shared experience, sensory processing, and proprioception, and concepts of invitation, initiation, and trespass, empathetic awareness, and imagination between horse and human. Gus and Deuce go elsewhere, invites two horses, Gus and Deuce, ages 3 and 4, to visit the living museum housed in the former Kirksey. Horses, should they choose to enter the museum, would be free to look around at will and their implicit curiosity to guide their exploration without expectation for predetermined outcome. As far as any conscious cues from their human companions, those would be for reassurance and not to guide them unduly. That being said, horses can read our intentions as fast as we form them. Human-equine relationships have long derived from inbreeding predatory structures, imbalances of power, physical and otherwise, concepts of dependence, interdependence, compliance, and autonomy. Horses' acute proprioception and sensory sensitivity view them with exquisite physical skills, primed not only for bridging communication between the species, but also for exploring their physical environments in depth and detail. Some horses are explorers. This horse in particular, a long time friend of mine, takes self-directed tours of the garden, pressing to its perimeters to examine what's on the other side. He seems to seek confirmation of things he senses apart, from fragments carried to him over the breeze to its distant pasture. He acknowledges the processes, placements of parts of those placements have changed since his last visit. The animal witness, the animal protagonist. Of course, occupies a particular crux that is burden the vehicle as a romantic midnight. What we do to horses and what we project upon them demonstrate our values. Boundaries between species, between bodies and space, between incursion and permission, coercion and compliance, between inside and outside, define concepts of self and other, subject and audience, and are often flexible and permanent. To try to know another, to imagine what he feels, what he knows, it opens up a vast frontier. Touch, proximity, familiarity, request, response mediate close quarter interactions and responses to surroundings. To sense and absorb some witness, to act and interact is to perform. Documentation invokes a third party. Horses sense the camera as it gaze. My work invites collaborations and explores aesthetic experiences for animals and novel engagements with their senses, invoking sensory empathy and imaginative immersion and ultimate some horses can use stairs. Where horses live and where we choose to interact with them considers other gaps in space, inside and outside qualities of ground support, hygiene. How does the horse get into the camper? Of his own volition, question of motivation and transgression, of course. Horse places and human places. Horse trailer, human camper. Some horses seek novelty, are curious where we go when we show them love behind us. Others watch warily as we approach, usually without invitation, as we touch them and assume their responsiveness to what we want at all times. Interacting with horses often places a premium on the obvious security of the smaller human. When requested, in many cases, compel horses indefinitely. And this also counts, you're all witnessing my instructions for my final trip. I don't know if that's important. You got it right now. Yet horses feel their prey status at all times, and intersecting with human things at human scale we enjoy the horse's security, emotional, physical, in this project was paramount. In all domestic animal relationships, concepts of bodily autonomy are in the foreground. We assume command and superiority in spite of physical infirmity. We have different relationships to objects and for preservation. Is a horse a bowl in a china shop? Gus, a 3-year-old quarter horse from Texas, ran Elusive without human interaction until 3 months prior. Horses often live in commercial barns, jangling, bustling places like dormitories. They are coming and going in 12 hours. New people, new horses, startling noises. They live in stalls on long hallways. Trucks with grinding gears make deliveries. The nearness of other horses, the collectivity of horse nests, helps level the sensory onslaught. In barns, horses walk in and out of doorways, into the dark from the bright sun, into the bright sun from the dark barn. These transitions are considered normal because it is a barn where horses live. Doors and gates are closed to them unless we open them. So horses are kept in horse places where they can be safe. Humans have our human places. I'm interested in where we invite horses to be. Often the question of scale determines access. The question of measurements reveals width and height of doors, of corridors and ceilings, width and depth of a room, doors to turn around. Or if wood or varnish is ideal, a horse of unshod also ideal, less likely to slip. So horses coming inside, permission versus initiative. In the private realm of individuals, so like for example, if a park is public, who is the public? The squirrels don't need access. I'm not looking at these definitions of audience. In the private realm of individual citizens, rules vary. In some houses, the dogs take over the sofa. Looking for and making their place in the room, exploring the empty house during the day, collecting the stocks, shredding the paper. To learn about the world, to participate. There is human longing to combine domestic spaces with animals. To watch TV with your horse best friend. These are important bridges and transgressions of respective mores. The horse is vulnerable and pinned in. A living room with a horse in it is not going to be part of your grandmother's room. So, in addition to the incompatible logistics, 2 legs, 4 legs, value systems tend to clash with stuff. It's impossible. Many of you have probably heard of Sergeant Reynolds. She was a recognized a mayor, when she was taught routes, would deliver on her own much needed ammunition. It says there, the site of the little white face bear gave her as she outbucks and bringing vitally needed ammunition. She had to complete an objective and find ways to accomplish it in very challenging ways. So I'm thinking of the animal actor. In my search for interviewing horse candidates, it was rather easy. I met Marvin, the free-range horse. At one point, he simply refused to return to the pasture. He's 37 years old. He runs at will without fences. When horses sleep, they dream, thinking of looking at them in the bedroom of a horse alone. Horses' vision, both binocular and monocular, means they can see nearly in the round, but must modulate between nose and right and between right and left. So he sees, the horse sees very nearly in the round. Your face rests in the head, he scans the horizon, alert to predators and takes them on. A horse's mouth is like a human hand, exquisitely sensitive to touch. Both investigate and attach to primary senses. Both function as a communicative fulcrum. The vascularized hoof. Horses feel vibrations through their feet. A wooden floor is strange, puzzling. It is better than concrete. A gauntlet is an intimidating, frightening, and sometimes dangerous thing. It must be endured or gone through in order to reach a desired place, for example. Its Swedish etymology implies running. Considering Gus is on the right of his head. 3 years, 4 months. He's only 3 years, 4 months old, and only 4 months of which has he spent with human contact. A couple of months prior, in 1 week, he learned to wear a saddle, carry a rider, and stop and move with ease. Object introduction. An old toy is a talisman where imagination and memory embed. A toy is an invitation. The horse and his bumble bobbs to and fro. Until now, the horse's bumble has never met mankind. Measuring. Horses. Sorry, there. Measuring. Horses have many dimensions. Measurements must be taken. Doors, floors, and corridors. Elsewhere is a container, elsewhere the museum is a container. Building on the street with a facade. An entrance. Its threshold marks outside from inside. Concept of open door informs project. Unhindered admission or access as an open door policy while granting equal opportunity. In this space, masses of objects and high shelves form a corridor leading into the interior. Corridor on passage in the building, doors leading to rooms, a belt of land linking to the outside and the inside. The etymology of corridor is running place. Another word for passageways, aisle. Aisles lead to stages or lines. How we think. So, as I propose the project, dreaming. He doesn't want to enter. The project documentation will look like this. The horse looks inside. Project visualization 2. The horse stands at the threshold. Horses have been inside buildings before. I wanted an invitation, not a stop. Horse guided, horse initiated, a bag without doors. In a way, though, any invitation is an imposition, says the introverted. And any project is, an inflicting upon. But I would not want my enthusiasm for this potential museum encounter, even if it transpired exclusively from the city sidewalk and didn't go any further, to put any horse at risk of even a hangnail, much less of even feeling demoralized or uncertain when, as a youngster, Gus in particular, under careful care, he would otherwise only be growing in confidence and technical mastery of skills. Field trips were a component of this. In preparation and context to work, as in these go elsewhere, items from the permanent collection traveled in the field to engage and assess interested horse individuals. Participation was not required. Events and site visits were conducted in the spirit of mutual cultural enrichment for the exploration of present and novel objects. Field trip seeks to engage horses on their own turf. Assemblages of objects are constructed for unobstructed horse investigation with sensory obstacle course of objects from the permanent collection. A minefield, as it were. It was a true trip to the field. And a kind of dress rehearsal for how to go to the museum and all the implied commands of please come in and look around, please touch, and don't get too close. For my part, I hope the horses might break something. mouth, muzzle, and hand. Both hand and mouth can grasp parts and sores. Both have sensitive nerve endings and acute senses of touch. The horse's hand can also taste and smell. Prehensile lips, like fingers, sort through grain and even powders, and left gates and restricted lids. Like the famous video of the mare who could open latch and open doorknobs to release her friends. Horses use their teeth to massage. Reciprocal horse grooming and her nip. Horse uses his mouth to investigate. As with his feet, he feels vibrations of his teeth and sinuses. Our hands are often within our visual fields. We look at what we touch. The horse's hand, his muzzle, whiskers, lips, nostrils, is in his blind spot. Lips are fingers, mouths like hands with opposable thumbs, and hands like fingertips. Touch mingles with taste and smell more than sight. Happiness shows in the mouth. Zygomatic smile. The horse considers, chews, and licks. His cognitive processing, the literal manifestation of rumination, shows in his mouth. Horses depend on their sense of smell the way we depend on language. They have acute senses of smell as well as the ability to taste the air via the flame in between their lip and gum. Sometimes it's like not all that. A horse receives information from all of the senses. To categorize it needs confirmation from multiple sources. So this exists as a video you can find on YouTube on the website. So I'm just going to gallop here. I'm just going to give it a stop. The very knowledgeable and kind horse people, James Cooler and Kate Cooler, were so generous with bringing the horses on their horses thousands of years ago, racing the project. Here's Gus' design. Let's keep very close to my visualization. Gus decided to come in really early and do some with he did more persuasion. He wanted to be with Gus was a big part of it and not wanting to speak with him. So put himself in reflection. He ruminated, he goes back and forth, and this is popping that was very resonant for him. They marked the camera like everyone. They were always counting puppies and tried to control them. And Gus walked up to a table and basically said, "Bring me things." Dues crept up and of course, it's very important, when you issue an invitation to also offer an entertainment. Of course, the salad involves all the vegetables that horses can eat. And for these horses who were recently running wild in the herd, Deuce is bringing his first cucumber. And when you go frame by frame in the video, you can see his mind being blown. So I mean, here they are in a very crowded performance store, and they've got the goal is to keep them safe from the foreign forces, but also to let them investigate. They were very captivated by the video. Deuce had a strong preference for Elmo. Gus had a strong preference for Owl. And they stayed. Visually dense. Rating is fundamental. So here he goes on the way out, and his Kate and James were speculating that these horses process, and they go home and they map and they go visions of what they see. So I imagine and the actual. I had to leave a project behind that did address the first look from my collection. So it links on and off, and it's meant to be truly happy entities. So the video and the product of it, I wanted in the way of thinking about what an audience is and who we think for, I feel like it's the worthy calling art for only one individual. So I shared the movie with them because of the projection surface, and you see him watching do some fun. I also made movies that considered what you would like to see. Movies for horses about grass. Museums and about how they figure out their mission of what is inclusivity, what does it mean to museums have to do things like meet physical requirements. They have to be accredited. They have to have ways for wheelchairs to come around. But what about who is that audience? It's broad to include the horse observer, and if it's meant truly as an invitation and not as a coercion. Obviously, horses are so sensitive to suggestion. So we tried in every way possible to just wait and watch and see, and the result was great enough and interest. And the people that were there, it was like a sense of Christmas Day, giddiness and excitement that lasted all day. Like was said earlier, being around horses is a privilege. It's a rare event. Things begin to center and swirl around them. We watched them like celebrities and uniforms. It was a transformative thing. As a side effect, James and Kate, they learned things about the capacities of the horses. Thank you for your patience.
About 10 minutes for questions, so maybe the people who presented can just swing your chairs around and sort of the conversation. And I think, given that this audience is such an amazing assembly of people, they don't necessarily have to be questions. You make a floor stage conversations.
I almost hate to ask, but what did happen to the crows in Rotterdam? Were they killed?
When last I checked, there were 4 that were still hiding out. But when I visited, there were 6 or 7 still alive. So they hired a shooter. And it shot Sorry. They have some nice activists on their side. Some who have even said that they have hidden some crows in their houses, and they're going to wait till the pressure dies down and release them. So we'll see. I think it's for president.
So I've got one for Karen, we were making you gallop right when you were talking about knots, and I wanted to invite you to respond to what Don Moore has to say about entanglement. He talks about the sort of knots that when you pull hard apart, they get tighter. So just wanted you to reflect a bit on, say more of what you might have said with Mickey Gallop, and reflect on Don's take on knots.
Well, I mean, I don't know that specific work, but I think that one of the points of the figure of the knot is that the point isn't to disentangle. Exactly. I mean, there are some points of tension that you do want to disentangle, and there's some, lines that you would want to trace, and you can trace all, but the lines that you can trace are infinite, I think, and the ways that they pull on each other are infinite. I don't think that you could, untangle a knot to the point that it would be clean and displayed and all of the lines taken away from each other. So, I would say that I certainly agree with that statement. But I do think that it's also useful to look at a knot and know that that to look at a knot is the beginning, and there you decide where you dive in, what points you want to pull and what points you want to release. But that you begin with that idea of both the infinite and the possible.
So I just want to say thank you for Zach and Evan for pushing me to think about performative experiments in relation to very different to that of practice of performances and the ones that have traditionally actually concerned me about the science bit is that I could see in these sorts of contests between something along the lines of field science or what philosophers of science tend to artificially divide as like observational practice from experimentation, setting up artificial sets of constraints on which to produce results. And I was just wondering, this just got me thinking about performative experimentation as also a different way of rethinking field work. So I was just wondering, actually, everyone might be interested in commenting on that, but especially of this distinction, perhaps between things like the feline sort of observations or sort of from the field versus these work of forces to set up situations that are somewhat sort of reorganized like in a way that, for instance, unlikely another or being recontextualized.
I think what I know about it, everybody's work, that they're all about observation and experimentation. Only different quantities and different degrees, emphasizing one than the other. But I guess I would assume that we'll be able to kind of understand on a positive that distinction between observation and experimentation.
Yeah, well, it seems like it's actually such a nice example. I mean, that's a kind of distinction to start with, but actually, as I think of how to problematize it in creative, ethnographic, or research practices, it's very generative.
I suppose I wanted to learn, but the impetus was to see if there was a way to create I do a series of interviews where one of the questions is, what human activities is your force and where the force of sort of going into too much territory. So I looked at candidates very carefully, looking for a confident force who might likely enjoy it with the goal of it, and sort of expectation of yeah, but looking for that, if it's the right candidate, it being something that they found enriching in the same way that you would plan a field trip to a museum. It had many parallels to James and Kate's South Outside Russians. It's almost like, straightening the collar and cowboys for children who are going into with due reverence to the museum. So I don't know if that answers your question, but thinking about research, the best part of it was the cameras are always intrusive. They always invoke a third party, and this additional kind of oppressive sense of being observed. These horses were good with it, and I made it as quiet as possible and keep them anywhere I could. But they are necessarily on a stage because of that. But is there enough quietness in the airwaves that they can be absorbing all that they want and showing their initiative? And I think you would succeed.
Well, I was just going to fill up that a little bit. It's with an artistically framed experiment like that. I was thinking, well, in a way, you can't fail because you have so much indeterminacy in play that, but then I thought, well, no, wait a minute, because when I was doing that experiment with Norman, like at a point, I was failing. I was absolutely failing because I had not learned anything except that I didn't know anything, which is good in a way without him. But from within it took that sort of humbling of all of my expectations and then going back and learning something. And that's part of artistic process as much as it is just sort of, I guess, ontological choreography and learning. But yeah, I think you can only be within it to find out what is actually at stake in it. With that amount of indeterminacy in play, you have to be fully immersed in it to know what you're hoping to learn.
That's a really good place, really good. That's about the no expectation of outcome, which is really important. And I think it dovetails with that anatomic stuff about giving latitude to the animals and then seeing what we can learn. That's great stuff about thinking like a rat, that the animals aren't doing something and responding to a setup, but it's oftentimes totally different than what the human researchers believe they're responding to. You know, sometimes we're the ones who have to like re-educate ourselves or like undo our thinking about the experimental setup. And it definitely relates to what you're saying, and I think people who have inspired this work, like Haraway and Karen Brown, like fusion, undoing binaries, collapsing this kind of thing of observation and experimentation. It's very important to the cats for sure. Also, we're very influenced by this guy, George Uccelli, who was a really well-known Italian biologist, but he also was like a cat person and wrote a lot about cats, and he said that cats first got him interested in science. Cats taught him that he was a mammal. Cats taught him about fundamental issues about physics. And so this issue of animals teaching us what we can learn from animals if we colonize our thought. Yeah.
That's what I think all of the things that you're at the I also want to compliment you all on the group commitment and get this project together, because I think that that's one aspect of the practice, which is need to really spend time to get figure out this and each of the in each case, each animals that you talked about have these kind of like dual understandings of where they're dependent on their cultural placement. You know, the cow here has one way of thinking about it, like you said, that back, you know, but then, you know, they're cool animals, but in India, or, you know, like they really have to do that there. So, you know, but the same thing you said with a lot of these animals, you know, some of them are cats, cow, but they're such amazing scavengers. So I just, my question is there a reason to launch a particular animals that you're talking about? Not to limit your study to you know, just in general, is there something about
That's for me. That's exactly what it is. Like Giorgio telling that way that I started with cats young enough that a lot of my identity or subject formation was in terms of felines. So they're just it's always there somehow, or it's deep.
That exquisite sensitivity, of course, that they know that I know, and how much of my life I really do spend just watching animal affairs and watching animals, so I have to pay attention to the word about it. And horses are, you know, like when they're disappeared and things like that, they have that sense of both tuning into a similar frequency on a radio, being fully present. So part of why horses, besides doing long-term investigative projects with them, was I was at this artist residency. I had a mandate to use the permanent collection, don't break it yet, don't hurt it, and it was a wonderful program, but very difficult to parse because it was just piles on installations on top of installations, conversing with installations. So it's a really fascinating place, and I was interested in. I was overwhelmed since early, and I thought, what would a horse, binocular and binocular vision be? What would they, what would be their priorities and sense of organization? Whereas it always felt a little bit like a few string objects from chaos, and we were given, things that if you were working with things and getting inspired, there was always a certain amount of inhibition because you needed to make sure it wasn't chaotic because the television was right? And the horses, just, I don't know, it was like that specialness, that occasion, that sort of benediction, that understanding of place and time, and everyone focusing around them. I think, and again, that part of that was relevance and showing them away from dogs and cats.
I can actually answer it with one word, and the word is enormous.
That's a long answer. Thank you very much.
So technically we're over time, but I'm actually privileged to ask Jeff one question that you might answer now, or you might choose to answer tomorrow. And what would Gotham say if you wandered into the lab and watched you there with lights? Like where's the frame here, and who's being performed
West utopian West, and it's weird. He's kind of like gone underground, but in France and Belgium, he's still very popular, rightfully so. It's not much sociology. The reason I'm glad you asked is that we have a colleague who went to grad school with CUNY named Colin Gerald McNamee. He's kind of, you know, I wrote a book about pitch and scroll pitch, and he's like very passionate about Goffman, where we both came out of this kind of urban ethnography line with the Billboard thing. And Goffman himself talks about the task of the ethnographer as being more and more like an ethnologist. He talks about the ethnographer needing to be like an ethnologist. So he somehow, Goffman was ahead of the curve on that as well, or realized that there was this fusion between those fields. And so I think that he's like kind of he's helping us on this opening of the social sciences, those multispecies and stuff that we're talking about. And you're right about the brain. I should think more about the brain. But we're talking about the brain as well. Yeah.
So tomorrow morning, right here, Kathy's going to tell us about an open letter she's written to David Bowie, asking him for his has to do with feces and David Bowie. I'm not going to say anymore. I'm going to hack a Winogradsky column and try not to make a mess. We collected some mud and water from a super fun site, and I'm going to invite you to make pen and not babies with us. Donating your DNA to this microbial ecosystem that we're going to have. So that's all tomorrow, and then later we got John and others talking about plants. Michael Martyr will be beamed in, and then in the afternoon we've got some open discussion. So that's where we'll see what we're training. Thanks for coming.
Oh yeah.